Another day. Today's Shabbat, and you're going to hear some noises in the background. That's not us. Just saying. Today, we are going to talk about the Jewish context, a little bit of the book of Romans. Now, Romans has a lot in it, and there's a lot taken out of context. We will not go every little bit. We kind of went more focused in Acts because there's a lot in Acts that we kind of want to make sure about. In the book of Romans, however, there's a lot of theology, which is good, but that's not really the concept of what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to get everybody to know that the context of certain discussions in the Brit Hadashah and how it relates to today and how the body of Messiah, for lack of a better term, does not get it right. So today we're going to talk about the book of Romans. So the book of Romans, it is not something that is written out of thin air by Shaul. He had a reason to write it. Now, when you first chapter of the book, you really can't really tell per se what it's about. Now, we have to understand the background of the Church of Rome or the Messianic community of Rome and understand its demographics, understand why Paul would want to write to the book of Romans, or write to the Messianic community in Rome. So, background of the book, Paul wrote it around 57 CE. And that's about 25 years or so, it's debatable, of Yeshua's ascension. So it's a good fair amount of time. He wrote the book of Romans during the chronology or the storytelling of the book of Acts. So it's in there. It was not written after the book of Acts because the book of Acts goes through a lot of Shaul's life in regards to his life. So the demographics of the Messianic community in Rome, majority, and this time that Shaul wrote the book, the majority was Gentiles, I would say. Were there some Messianic Jews in there? Sure. I would say absolutely. Absolutely there were. I wouldn't say that they were the majority. They were not. And that's one of the reasons why we are writing, why Shaul wrote this book. So he begins in chapter 1, and he goes through a discussion of idolatry and other acts. But that's not what we're focusing on today. So I'm going to go straight to Romans 2. Romans chapter 2. And we're coming to a discussion that many in the body of Messiah have misconstrued, taken out of context. I don't even know. I can say a bunch of different things in regards to this. In fact, I was just at a conference where someone took this very passage. I'll talk about it, the actual teaching that was here in a little bit. But wow, I couldn't believe what I heard. So we'll get into it in here in the book of Romans. So I'm just going to read the whole chapter, just all the way through, and then we will stop and discuss. Shaul writes in Romans chapter 2, verse 1, therefore you have no excuse, and I am reading from the Brit Hadashah of the Complete Jewish Bible. Okay. Therefore you have no excuse, whoever you are, passing judgment. For when you judge someone else, you're passing judgment against yourself, since you who are judging do the same thing he does. We know that God's judgment lands impartiality on those who do such things. Do you think that you, a mere man, passing judgment on others who do such things, yet doing them yourself, will escape the judgment of God? Or perhaps you despise the riches of his kindness, forbearance, and patience because you don't realize that God's kindness is intended to lead you to return from your sins. But by your stubbornness, by your unrepentant heart, you are storing up anger for yourself in the day of anger, when God's righteous judgment will be revealed. For he will pay back each one according to his deeds. To those who seek glory, honor, and immortality by perseverance in doing good, he will pay back eternal life. But to those who are self-seeking, who disobey the truth and obey evil, he will pay back with wrath. He will pay back wrath and anger. Verse 9, yes, he will pay back misery and anguish to every human being who does evil, to the Jew first, and then to the Gentile. But glory and honor and shalom to everyone who keeps doing what is good, to the Jew first, then to the Gentile. For God does not show favoritism. All who have sinned outside the framework of Torah will die outside the framework of Torah, and all who have sinned within the framework of Torah will be judged by Torah. For it is not merely the hearers of Torah whom God considers righteous, rather it is the doers of what Torah says who will be made righteous in God's sight. For whenever Gentiles who have no Torah do naturally what the Torah requires, then these, even though they don't have Torah, for themselves are Torah. For their lives show that the conduct that Torah dictates is written in their hearts. Their consciences also bear witness to this, for their conflicting thoughts sometimes accuse them and sometimes defend them on a day when God passes judgment on people's innermost secrets. According to the good news, as I proclaim it, he does this through the Messiah, Yeshua. Now we're getting into verse 17, and as a reminder, everybody who is watching, this is not us making the noise. Okay. But if you call yourself a Jew and rest on Torah and boast about God and know his will and give your approval to what is right because you have been instructed from the Torah, and if you have persuaded yourself that you are a guide to the blind, a light in the darkness, an instructor for the spirituality, unaware, and teacher of children, since in the darkness have been instructed from the Torah, and if you have persuaded yourself that you are a guide to the blind and a light in the darkness, and an instructor for the spiritually unaware and a teacher of children, since in the Torah you have the embodiment of knowledge and truth. Then you who teach others, don't you teach yourself? Preaching, thou shalt not steal. Do you steal? Saying, thou shalt not commit adultery. Do you commit adultery? Detesting idols. Do you commit idolatrous acts? You who take such pride in Torah, do you, by disobeying the Torah, dishonor God? As it says in the Tanakh, for it is because of you that God's name is blasphemed by the Gentiles. For the circumcision is indeed of value if you do what Torah says. But if you are a transgressor of Torah, your circumcision has become uncircumcision. Therefore, if an uncircumcised man keeps the righteous requirements of the Torah, won't his uncircumcision be counted as circumcision? Indeed, the man who is physically uncircumcised but obeys the Torah will stand as a judgment on you who have had a Brit Milah and have Torah written out but violated. For the real Jew is not merely Jewish outwardly. True circumcision is not only external and physical, On the contrary, the real Jew is one inwardly, in true circumcision of the heart, spiritual, not literal, so that his praise comes not from other people, but from God. There was a lot there. Okay. First, when we're going to talk about this particular passage, that the, well, I'm trying to think of how best to understand. We understand that Shaul is a Pharisaic Jew who still believes in Torah, and he hasn't changed his mind on that. And so he is discussing here what or how the Gentiles should be in this community and how they should behave. Okay. So we're going to go straight to verse 9 of chapter 2. When Shaul says, yes, he will pay back misery and anguish to every human being who does evil, to the Jew first and then to the Gentile. All right, so we understand that doing evil is what? Not following Torah. It's simple. Rabbi Bernstein's taught it. Rabbi Yitzhak Shapiro's taught it. Many have taught it. Also, but glory and honor and shalom to everyone who keeps doing what is good, to the Jew first and then to the Gentile. Okay. So that is following Torah as well. So he gives shalom or glory and honor to the Jew first and then to the Gentile. It doesn't change. Okay. So we have to understand that Shaul is still making kind of a separation here. The Jew first and then to the Gentile. He's not looking at a combination, or he's not looking like they're joined together as one person in the flesh, if you will. Okay. For God does not show favoritism. Okay, and that's true. If you look in Torah, he states that. All who have sinned outside the framework of Torah will die outside the framework of Torah. Okay, do you sin outside the framework of Torah? Yes, you do. Okay, and all who have sinned within the framework of Torah will be judged by Torah. Okay, if you're born into Israel, you're inside the framework of Torah. If you are a proselyte and have willingly converted, you are under the law. This is not a new concept. For it not merely hearers of Torah whom God considers righteous, rather it is the doers of what Torah says will be made righteous in God's sight. Okay. So what is he saying here? Do Torah. Basically, you do Torah. And you're going to be, not just hear Torah, right? We've heard this. Doers, not hearers, from Yaakov, the book of James. You can see that it is taught in Torah. Abraham was considered righteous. Why? Because he did what Hashem said. He didn't just say, I hear you, God, and then does nothing. So, moving on. Okay. For whenever Gentiles who have no Torah do naturally what the Torah requires, then these, even though they have written, even those they have Torah for themselves, are Torah. So basically, there are those who do good. What is that? What is good? Torah. They do Torah naturally. And that's a good thing, right? For their lives show that their conduct dictates that Torah is written in their hearts. Okay? All right. Their consciousness also bear witness to this. They want to do right. They want to follow Torah, even though they don't know they're following Torah. Okay? For their conflicting thoughts sometimes accuse them, sometimes defend them. We can go on that, but we're not going to do that. On a day when God passes judgment on people's inmost secrets, yes, according to the good news as I proclaim it. He does this through the Messiah, Yeshua. Wow. Anyway, verse 17. But if you call yourself a Jew and rest on Torah and boast about God. All right, so understand that he is talking to majority Gentiles in this, Gentiles, proselytes, sure. All God-fearers too would be included in this, in a sense of not his topic, but who his discussion is in the letter. But now he's talking about strictly those who are halakhically Jewish, proselytes, those who are born. Okay? But if you call yourself a Jew and rest on Torah and boast about God, okay, and know this and know his will and give your approval to do what is right because you have been instructed from Torah. Okay, those are the proselytes, those are those born Jewish. They've been learning Torah for a very long time. And if you have persuaded yourself that you are a guide to blind, a light in the darkness, by the way, that's Tanakh, Yeshayahu, the Psalms. Okay. An instructor for the spiritually unaware and a teacher of children, that's Torah. Since in the Torah you have embodied the embodiment of knowledge and truth. We got this. This is nothing. We should know that Torah is an embodiment of knowledge and truth. Then you who teach others, don't you teach yourself? All right, so now he's talking to them, and he's like, okay, wait a second. You who do all these things, he's now going to ask certain questions, right? When you, as a person who's knowledgeable in Torah, when you're preaching, thou shalt not steal, are you doing what you're preaching? Saying, if you commit adultery X, saying, thou shalt not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? So he's making, right, in the book of Romans, Paul uses literary devices in his letter. Some would say, well, Paul sounds like a schizophrenic Jew, which is a term from actually Rabbi Yitzhak Shapira. Is he a schizophrenic? No, he knows exactly what he's talking about. So when he sounds like he is doubting himself, he is not really doubting himself. He's actually asking a question for you, the reader of this letter. He's like, okay, wait a second.
He's putting himself in the place of the reader and asking an objection the reader might make to what his statement is.
Exactly. And if you didn't hear that, Shaul is putting himself in the place of the actual reader, making the objection for the reader if they have the question, like Shaul is reading their mind. Okay. That's good, thank you. You take such pride in Torah, do you, by disobeying Torah, dishonor God? And this is a particular question. Do you dishonor God by not following Torah? When you are actually, in the context of what he's saying, when you're talking and preaching to these people and you disobey Torah, are you dishonoring God by disobeying Torah? As it says in the Tanakh, for it is because of you that God's name is blasphemed by the Gentiles. So the answer is yes. If you're teaching others to follow Torah, but you don't follow Torah, you're a hypocrite. Yes, that's a good answer. Now we hit to the crux of what everybody's talking about. So, for uncircumcision, verse 25 of Romans 2, for circumcision is indeed of value if you do what Torah says. All right, stop right there. Is he negating the value of circumcision? No. In this aspect, is circumcision, no, he's saying it's in value if you do what Torah says. That's the key. Right? So, but if you are a transgressor of Torah, your circumcision has become uncircumcision. So I got to ask the stupid question. Do you physically become uncircumcised? No. Right? Let me get this straight. Right. It's the value of it is is pickle. It doesn't, there is no value in if you're not following Torah. So so the person physically does not become un-Jewish. Right? They're still Jewish. All right, you're still circumcised. It's just the value of it is not that great because you're not following Torah. Okay. Thank you. Verse 26. Therefore, if an uncircumcised man keeps the righteous requirements of the Torah, won't his uncircumcision be counted as circumcision? All right. Are we talking about a physical act of circumcision? Does the Gentile become magically circumcised? No. They're still a Gentile. So verse 27, indeed, the man who is physically uncircumcised but obeys the Torah will stand as judgment on you who have a Brit Milah, or a circumcision, and have Torah written out but violated. Okay, so physically, there's still a separation there. Now he's talking about if those who are uncircumcised follow Torah, right, will that stand as a judgment who has a circumcision and is under Torah, or Brit Milah? In other words, who is obligated to follow Torah? Those under the circumcision. They're obligated to follow Torah. Okay? And then what Shaul is saying is those who are not circumcised but willingly follow Torah is acting as a judgment against those who are obligated or born into Torah or under Torah and don't follow Torah. That does not mean that Mr. Gentile replaces Mr. Jew. It does not. That does not happen. That's not what they're saying here, or is not what he's saying here. Okay? For the real Jew, verse 28, for the real Jew is not merely Jewish outwardly. True circumcision is not only external and physical. On the contrary, the real Jew is one inwardly. The true circumcision is of the heart, spiritually, not literal, so that his praise comes not from other people, but from God. All right, so this is where we get it. Who is the real Jew? Right? In
It's the Torah observant one.
the Torah observant one. That, okay. Goodbye, everybody. That's the answer. And this is where I was in a conference, and this is where, I heard things that I didn't want, I just wanted to unhear immediately, but it's like I wanted an hour of my life back. But this particular person I heard redefined circumcision. He redefined circumcision to the point of circumcision is only that of the heart. So the ones who are really from Israel, right, are those who are circumcised by the heart. Doesn't matter your physical circumcision status. That's in short what was taught. And that's why I wanted an hour of my life back, because I was like, I can't believe I'm at a place that supposedly supports Messianic Judaism and just made a statement like, I'm just like, are you serious? How can, no, I'm a Gentile, okay? I freely admit that. I'm okay with that. I am not, I'm all right with that. Would you say I'm circumcised in the heart by Hashem? I would like to think so. Am I a real Jew? No, I am not. And that's okay. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm a God-fearer. That's okay. That don't bother me. I know my place, and that's okay. Some people don't like it. They got pride issues, I guess. I don't know. Thank you. So, now, for the real Jews, not one who's merely Jewish on the outside, and I'm glad David Stern said merely, right? Let me see here, look into, right, so 28 in the, what is this? The NIV. It says a person who is not a Jew, a person is not a Jew who is one only outwardly, nor circumcision. All right, so I mean that's NIV. That sounds horrible, really. And then 28 here in the ESV, for no one is a Jew who is merely one outwardly. Okay, so those English texts are awful. Those translations are awful. So no one is a Jew, and that's what it says in the ESV.
Merely outwardly. So
Right, but no.
inwardly they would have to be Torah observant if you think about that.
Exactly, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So what he's saying here is a Jewish person or a Gentile, a Jew or a Gentile, has to be circumcised by the heart, straight up. Now, here's my question. Is the circumcision of heart a Brit Hadashah saying? In other words, did we get this?
No, so it's in I believe it's in the prophets.
Okay, so we have Jeremiah 31, where it says we'll have Torah written on our hearts. And then Ezekiel will say something, I'll turn your heart and flesh into a heart of stone. Although if you know Ezekiel, who is Ezekiel writing to? He's writing to Israel, just saying. But what would I tell you that, and you guys probably know this, that it's written in Torah. That the circumcision of the heart is a Torah thing. In other words, Shaul didn't make this up. He didn't. It's a idea that it comes from Torah. So,
Well, it had to come from Torah because at this state there is no New Testament. It didn't come from the Brit Hadashah.
well, correct.
The prophets were after.
That would be correct. But I'm just saying, even if Paul is writing to this letter in this day, when he wrote this, did he make this idea up when he wrote it to the community in Rome? And the answer is no. So if you go to Devarim, Deuteronomy, chapter 10, all right, and I am going to verse 12 of Deuteronomy 10. And it'll sound familiar when I start reading it. All right. Okay. So now, this is verse 12 of Deuteronomy 10. So now, Israel, all that Adonai your God asks from you is to fear Adonai your God, follow all his ways, love him, and serve Adonai your God with all your heart and with all your being, to obey for your own good the mitzvot and regulations of Adonai, which I'm giving you today. Verse 14, see the sky, the heaven, and beyond the sky in heaven, and everything on it, all belong to Adonai your God. Only Adonai took enough pleasure in your ancestors to love them and choose their descendants after them, yourselves, above all peoples, as he still does today. All right, this is Moshe. Okay. Verse 16, therefore circumcise the foreskin of your heart and don't be stiff-necked any longer. Does that sound familiar? For Adonai your God, verse 17, is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great, mighty, and awesome God who has no favorites and accepts no bribes. That sounds just like we just read that. He secures justice for the orphan and the widow. He loves the foreigner, giving food and clothing. Therefore, you are to love the foreigner since you were foreigners in the land of Egypt. Wow, that sounds like what Shaul was writing in the book of Romans. Yeah. You are to fear Adonai your God, serve him, cling to him, and swear by his name. He is your praise, and he is your God, who has done for you these great and awesome things which you have seen with your own eyes. Your ancestors went down into Egypt with only 70 people, but now Adonai your God has made your numbers as many as the stars in the sky. Circumcise the foreskin of your heart. In other words, circumcise your heart. So what is Hashem saying in Deuteronomy? Number one, Brit Milah, this is Torah, Brit Milah on the 8th day. Circumcise. Good. Got that down. What else does he say? Circumcise your heart too, so you can follow his mitzvot. And what is Shaul writing here? The same thing. It's not this idea, and this drives me insane in a lot of ways, is that when people are saying this, like Shaul is writing something new. It's like, oh, you're only a real Jew if you follow Torah. Circumcision means nothing. That is incorrect. Circumcision for Israel is commanded by Torah. It doesn't change. Just because you think the definition, I'm changing the definition. You're a real Jew only if you're circumcised within the heart. No.
Well, Paul says later on, so is there no advantage?
Oh,
Well,
right.
every way, in
Right.
every way there is an advantage.
There is.
I think because we don't understand what the book was written for, if the book is written because Paul is saying, these people in Rome are getting the idea that the Jews are being replaced, and we have got to nip this in the bud.
Right.
This is a horrible thing. This is an emergency situation.
Sure.
The Jews are not being replaced. So then you have to look at everything he says through that lens.
Right. Yeah, the Jews are not being replaced. The Gentiles are not are replacing. Right. It's a replacement theology. And if you look at the fact, if you state that a true Jew, a Jew is the only spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual circumcision, that's replacement theology. It really is, because now you're replacing those who actually had the physical circumcision, which that is not the case at all. Physical circumcision matters, as you stated in Romans 3, and we'll get to that toward the end, because that matters. It is. So when you say for the real Jew is not merely Jewish only outwardly, true circumcision is not only external and physical. On the contrary, the real Jew is one inwardly. True circumcision is of the heart, spiritual, not literal, so that his praise comes not from other people, but from God. So, are you a Jew if you're spiritualized spiritually, but not physically? Inside time and space? Let me rephrase that question.
No.
Yeah, I was inside time and space. Let's just say me. If I am circumcised by the heart, can I call myself a Jew? No. Right? No. I can't do that. And nor is that is not what Shaul is stating here. Right? He's actually, what is his discussion about in the end of Romans chapter 2? Right? It's about those from Israel. Right? If you teach this, do you follow this? If you teach that, do you follow that? Right? And he talks about those from the nations who follow Torah act as a judgment for those from Israel that don't follow Torah. And that's what he's saying. Right? And so indeed the man who's physically uncircumcised but obeys Torah will stand as a judgment on those who have had a Brit Milah or circumcision, have Torah written out but violated, because they are commanded, obligated to follow Torah. For the real Jew, in other words, the real Jew is not one merely just Jewish outwardly, merely, doesn't discount it totally, just merely Jewish. And true circumcision is not external and physical. On the contrary, the real Jew is one inwardly, true circumcision of the heart, spiritual, not literal, so that his praise comes not from other people, but from God.
But he's still really talking to like proselytes.
Yes.
I mean, when he says those who call themselves Jews, I always thought he meant Jews.
Sure.
But it's like Jews with a apostrophe marks. You call,
Right.
I mean, he's saying it sort of sarcastically.
Sure.
You call yourself a Jew.
Right.
Well, all these things need to be met.
Yeah.
He's not really talking
You're a
about,
proselyte.
Jews don't call themselves,
Sure.
they are Jews.
And that could be, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think that he's really talking to proselytes and people who are converting to Judaism.
Okay.
I don't think that's it
I
at
think talking
think
to the
it is.
God-fearers.
I don't think so. I think that there were problems between the new converts and Jews. They were meeting in the synagogue in Romans. And he is here addressing the Jewish members who are not being friendly towards new converts. And he's bringing them down a bit and saying, just because you're circumcised, just because you do this, that's not enough. You also have to live right, follow Torah, and part of that is it's kind of like, who's my brother?
Okay.
Question, saying, yes, you're Jewish, but these other guys are also now in your congregation, and you should all be acting right toward each other. Then
Okay.
later on, he gets onto the converts, and the book
Okay.
it tells them, you guys got to listen to your leaders, and,
Okay.
not live wrong.
Yeah.
So I think he's addressing both sides.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see him addressing teachers as, you're teaching these people, but you better have the goods to be able to teach them.
That too, definitely, yeah.
Because
Okay.
people know you and they see you're not doing it. Why should they listen to you?
So here is, and so we've heard multiple, and what's the answer to that? Are you right or are you right?
Yes.
Yes. That's true, because
It is.
sometimes we don't know, especially in the book of Romans, who exactly Shaul's actually talking to. Is he talking to proselytes? Does this work for proselytes? And the answer is correct. It does work for proselytes. So here's the next question. Does it work if he's talking to those who are physically Jewish, but they have a puffed up, idea, or a little prideful because they are Jewish and they're talking down to the Goyim? Sure, that could work. We don't know exactly what his audience is, because you have multiple audiences. You have those that are God-fearers who are not converted physically. You have proselytes that are physically converted, but are not Jewish from a natural aspect. And then you have those from Israel who were born Jewish, right? Now, going on with this, right? Even those that are proselytes, let's just say that, if you are converted, right? And conversion isn't like, I feel like stopping by a synagogue today, and you know what? I want to become Jewish. I'm just going to talk to a rabbi, and I'm just going to get No, that doesn't happen. You have it's years to study this. And a lot of times the rabbis would be like, deny you like 3 times before they even say yes, right? You better be serious, because as Rabbi Bernstein would say, you want to become Jewish? Why? Why would you want to do that? Right? And, and rabbis would ask you the same question. Why would you want to do that? You better have a good reason.
Into the flyer.
Right. I was just like, why? But without, and there's a whole bunch of politics, because, a lot of this could work. But we do want to state this, that what he's saying here is that a Jewish person, one who's either a proselyte or natural, has to not only be physically Jewish in the sense of circumcision, but must have a circumcision of the heart. And that is not a new concept that was just looked at in Devarim chapter 10. This Hashem commands them to have a circumcised heart. Okay, so now we go to chapter 3, and in chapter 3 of Romans, this is where Shaul uses a literary device. He steps in the mind of the reader, or which in that time would have been Rome, the community of Rome, and he steps in the mind of the reader and asks this question. Then what advantage has the Jew? Okay. We just talked about who is Israel, right? Or who is a Jew, right? And we just stated that it does not negate those that are born from Israel. Does not negate it. He actually goes on what Israel should do for the nations. If you're going to be a light to the nations, be circumcised of the flesh and of the heart. Okay. then what advantage has the Jew? That is the question. So the Jew has an advantage. And because, well, at least that's what this literary device, this person is asking. What is the value of being circumcised? You were just talking about, circumcision and uncircumcision. I can be, if I am circumcised, I can become uncircumcised. But if I am, uncircumcised, I can become circumcised without actually going under the knife. No. Here, Shaul states, then what advantage has the Jew? What is the value of being circumcised? And this is Shaul's answer to this person asking this question. Much in every way. Okay, stop right there. And this is exclamation point. Much in every way. Right? I asked the question to the person during this conference. Not even stating what it is, because he was talking about circumcision and uncircumcision, so on and so forth. Or who's the real Israel? And I asked him the question, so what's the advantage of the Jew? I mean, straight up. That's what I asked. And they're like, well, they're kind of an example to us now, and so they're kind of, not a big deal. It's like, no. And I stood up, and I didn't stand up, but I said, well, Shaul says much in every way. Look, what is the advantage of being circumcised? What is the advantage of the Jew? Much in every way. Now, we can go ad nauseum and discuss which is, every way. But it's like, if I ask Slade, is a Jew have an advantage in every way when it comes to, when you're talking about Torah, Tanakh, and the Brit Hadashah? What is the advantage of being Jewish in circumcision? Shaul says much in every way.
Well, when it comes to circumcision,
Yeah.
But when it's done so early, we don't remember how it felt.
Right. So in the first place, he starts giving some examples. Right? So the example is, in the first place, the Jews were entrusted with the very words of God, Torah. And by the way, this has not stopped. Israel is still entrusted with the very words of Torah. To this day, they keep Torah because has the quote-unquote church been good for Torah? No. Israel has kept Torah for these past couple thousand years since Yeshua. And if some of them were unfaithful, so what? So some Jewish people were unfaithful. Do we know that's the case? Yes, we know that's the case. That's in the Tanakh. Does their faithfulness cancel God's faithfulness? Here's the question, right? If Israel, or those in Israel that were unfaithful, does their unfaithfulness cancel out God's promises? And the answer is no. God's faithfulness still stands even though Israel is unfaithful from time to time. And not all of us, Israel is unfaithful. We have to understand that.
Well, if you were to ask the question a different way, are all Christians faithful?
Yeah.
No.
So does their faithfulness
No
cancel?
matter really what your label is.
So does Israel's faithlessness cancel God's faithfulness? And the answer is no. Heaven forbid, Shaul states. God would be true even if everyone were a liar, as the Tanakh says, so that you, God, may be proved right in your words and win the verdict when you are put on trial. So I'm going to stop here. We have to understand that Israel still has a place. They still hold Torah, and they still preserve Torah and Tanakh, all of Tanakh. And we can't replace Israel and those circumcised. So we have to remember that. It's important as that. Don't replace Israel. Don't do it. And I will stop there.
Can I interject this?
You can interject.
Back to chapter 1. God really Paul sets the stage for what we just looked at. Chapter 1, verse 17, well, 16, 17. It says, "For I am not ashamed of the good news, since it is God's powerful means of bringing salvation to everyone who keeps on trusting, to the Jew especially, but equally to the Gentile. For it is revealed how God makes people righteous in his sight. And from bringing to end, it is through trust, as the Tanakh puts it. But the person who is righteous will live his life by trust,
Okay.
not by circumcision. All those things are rules. If we keep those things and we trust God,
Okay.
then whether it's a Jew or a Gentile, it's applicable.
Okay.
Anybody who tries to demean pulling somebody out of that category or putting somebody in that category is irrelevant, because God's done put them there.
Got it.
And they have to, and that's how he sees them righteous.
Okay. I'm gonna pause you for a second. I'm gonna go ahead and shut the live stream off. They can't hear you because I'm on a mic here. So we were gonna discuss this offline, but we can continue on with that. Shabbat shalom.
Good job, Sigrid.
Good job.